Okay. Can everybody hear me, including the people in the back row? Okay. So my name is Jonathan Brilliant, and what I am, regrettably, is an artist. And what I'm known for and what I do is this body of work. And where it began, and this is the question that I'm sure a lot of people have, and I'll give you this little introduction, and then the best way to do this, because it's really informal, is I'll take questions and we can sort of have a conversation that way. But where this body of work began was in 2006. I was really struggling with my identity and who I was and what I was going to do, and it somehow came to me that what I really wanted to be in life was a British artist. And so what I determined was that British artists did something very specific. British artists went out into their natural environment, whether that be the streets of London or the woods of England or Scotland or Ireland or wherever England really is, because I've never actually been there. They would then bring those materials into the gallery and create works in the gallery that reflected their natural environment. So I put two and two together and decided, well, if I'm to be a British artist, my natural environment must be a coffee shop. I'll take everything I can from there and make work. Well, what happened is that initial work was done for an artist residency. And residencies are a very specific thing where somebody pays you to go somewhere and make work without the promise of an exhibition. And that was in 2006. About 2 years later, in 2008, a gallery in New York invited me to recreate the residency project in a gallery. And here comes the problem. I had no studio for production per se, but if you could bring me in, and I agreed. So that first show in 2008, when I traveled this work for the first time, I literally slept in the gallery and built the piece there. And since then, and from there, starting in 2009, I stumbled into what at first was a joke. I said, oh, I'm going to go on my Have Sticks Will Travel tour. And it was meant to be 4 months in 2009, and it's now bridged into 4 years. And I've basically been jumping from place to place, everywhere from Berlin, Germany, to Arkadelphia, Arkansas, to Lake City, South Carolina. I've been to Mexico, I've been to Australia, going to Paris later this year, and I just go wherever I'm invited. And the thing about this body of work is I have a couple simple rules. If you ever see this work, it means I've been there to build it where it's to be exhibited, and when the show is over, or when they've grown tired of the piece, it's to be destroyed and it doesn't exist anymore. And the other part of it is any of the materials I use are just common materials found within a coffee shop related to the to-go coffee cup and anything that you would touch with a coffee cup. So that's why you see things like coffee cup sleeves stacked together, and that makes the linear sculpture. And these are coffee stir sticks woven together. And in larger projects, when I have solo shows, I'll do things like use the coffee cup lids to make wall sculpture. I'll use napkins to do prints that are put onto other paper. I use straws, and I use the cups themselves. I'll put motors in them. Does anyone here live near Augusta, Georgia, or go to the Morse? I have a show opening next week at the Morse Museum that'll actually have some of the, if it survived the trip there, I make these vibrating coffee cups where I motorize the cup itself and just let it run loose through the space. Or in this situation, it's confined in a crate. And so the reason this show gets blessed with a crate is that over last year, over 2012, I've started really letting this body of work feed itself. So where the pieces were originally about this sort of suicide mission of bring me in for a week and I'll build everything on site and that's the piece you get, I'm now sort of known as someone that you can, as in this case, ask me to come in, I'll build on site and I'll leave the piece and then you get to enjoy it and we destroy it when it's over. So the crate has become part of the shows, and throughout 2012 I've done different versions of this where the show is literally coming out of the crate, and it's both sort of a reference to what my life has been like, and it's also a nice visual cue. Imagine, and this is the truth, all this material, if broken down to its component parts, would easily fit back into that crate. And so it's to give you a sense that my job as a sculptor is basically the inefficient process of storage. I take things that would fit in a very confined space and expand them. And then the last thing I'll say before I start looking for questions is, yes, Brilliant is my real last name. By birth, I didn't change it. Trust me, I wouldn't have picked it. And then the sticks are all woven in place without glue, just through tension, just through weaving. The sleeves are also just stacked and tensioned together. And the reason is not because I wanted to make it any harder on myself, it's because what I really liked about those British artists that I started talking about is the only way they alter their materials is through hand process. So there's no alchemy, there's no mystery, there's no disconnect between the time spent with the material and the results. So everything here that I've done can be undone. And anytime, that's the point of that, is that it's only a hand process, so it's a neutral process. I've only altered the material through time spent with it. So now that I've got a bunch of rapt eyes on me, who's got questions?
What does it feel like when you tear it down?
The question was, what does it feel like when you tear it down? The answer is, I've never actually been around for the takedown, and the times when I have, It's really just, I try and get it done, you know. By the time I finish, really by the time I finish planning, by the time I get to a site, I'm sort of over it. Like the piece is finished for me the day I start building it, so I have no real attachment to it after this. After Tuesday, I actually finished on Tuesday, so I've already been home and helped send off that other show that's going out of town and worked on some other projects. I just came down to do this, and then I got to go back. That's a great question. She asked, do I have a vision of what it's going to look like when it's finished, or does it just evolve on site? And so the answer is yes and no and yes and no. I know whenever I'm invited somewhere, I try and get as much information about the space as possible. And I know what I'll often do is I'll print out an image of the space or even the floor plan, and I'll just sort of not plan, but literally sort of draw a gesture or a shape and sort of get the gestalt of the piece, of the show. So I know what I want the overall gesture to be like. And in this situation, if you saw my thumbnail sketches, all I knew is I wanted a crate with the lid exploding out of it and things moving out of the crate into the skylight. So I knew that much, and by the time I get here, this is sort of like the last drawing. So I've done maybe a couple doodles and sketches of what it would be like, but then this becomes the final drawing in space of that. A combo question, where do I start? Is it from the bottom and the top down? And the coy answer is I really start with those drawings, and then by the time I get here, I can work up top, I can work down here, I can work on the side, it can work in all directions at once. It's not crochet, there's no one leading edge. I mean, logistically with this one, when I got here, the first thing I knew I wanted to do was land the crate where I knew it should be. I started tensioning the lid, the sleeves went in, and then I just started building the sticks around it. The best part about this though, and I have some stickers scattered around. If you guys go to my website, I am a consummate over-documenter, and you can see for every project I've done, and this is the 30th in this series, there's a stop-motion time-lapse of every one of them, and you'll see me doing really funny things like, I know what I'm doing, so I'll dance around when the camera's taking pictures, so you'll see like the genie lift go up and down. I'm deliberately doing that while the camera's taking pictures. But you can see where I work and how it's just like working on a drawing, but instead of a blank sheet of paper, I have a blank gallery. And the same way, some people are very systematic and might work on a drawing from one side to the next. I am not. If I'm working on a drawing, I'm looking at the gestalt, I'm looking at the whole sheet of paper and working all over it. I mean, there's a sculptor named Richard Deacon who's a huge influence on me. And when I list the British artists, I almost feel like it becomes really transparent because you can see that I've just taken all of them, put them in a blender and tried to figure out the cheapest way possible to make their work. So it's still people like Richard Deacon, Tony Cragg, Anthony Gormley, Bill Woodrow. Richard Long had a lasting impact on me because he's the guy who goes, Richard Long is, I don't expect you all to Google it, but you should be taking notes. Richard Long, if you don't know, is a British artist who goes out into the woods and either makes work by walking a path in the woods and then presents photographs, or he'll bring mud from the natural world and make wall drawings. And I make my own mud using espresso oftentimes and then do wall drawings in the gallery. But in terms of architects, I'm kind of old. The only architect I really could like pull off the top of my head that I like and who I have books of at home is Le Corbusier, and that's kind of old-fashioned. I know we're not supposed to celebrate modernism, but
the reason why I ask is because it's like the piece itself is a very public piece, but it's also very intimate at the same time because it kind of really brings that unity with the cafe itself. You know, when you do go into a space, it's very public, but then those small tables really do create that connection of intimacy. When you especially go into this part right here, I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, well, the interior-exterior space, it's kind of funny. I'm more casual than I should be with this work in that the decisions are almost as simple as like, well, last time, you know, it's like, well, the last time I did this, the piece was closed in and was just a sculpture. Maybe this time I should open it up and make it a room. And then it's like, after this, I'm like, I really don't like that there's a room. So the next one I do, I already know where it's going to be, is not going to be a room. But it's like, I imagine it's worse for architects that they have to wait years to see their projects realized. But I have the privilege of like, once I see this one realized, I'm over it, and the next one, I'll get it right. So the next time, you won't get to go inside of it. So I don't know. Yeah, but yeah, I guess I get to have fun. Any questions? Yes. Hi.
Hi. How does this compare in size? Is it on the big size of what you do, or medium? Or?
I don't know anymore because I'm always just thinking about working within the space I'm given. And so in this situation, even though I would have happily tackled this whole room and I had a show in a room about half this size, I was kind of given the parameters of within this couple spaces. So for me, it's always about the relationship of me to the space I'm given. And so they all feel the same to me, whether I'm working in someone's bathroom, as you've seen, or working in a larger space. I have this part I've never figured out where it's coming from, but I have some sense of like how much stuff to blank space. And the same thing happens if I sit down with a blank piece of paper and make a print or a drawing. I'm still see the same amount of white space to stuff that I put on the page. So if you go to that, to me, the piece in the bathroom is just as big as this because it occupies. I've done 2 pieces in people's homes, and one of them is in somebody's bathroom. It's a true story, and she's actually seen it. But that piece is the same, to me, is the same size because I was responding to the same, people still have to be able to walk through there and use it, and so I don't know, they all feel the same size to me. But if more specifically, this is maybe average size. I used about 6 cases of sticks, which is what I can burn through in about 8 days. 6 cases is roughly 60,000. I'm not counting, it's not like the jelly bean jar, but everyone always likes to ask. I think it's the Guinness Book of World Records obsession, like, how many sticks have you used? So, yes?
What was it about this space that motivated this particular form?
It's the space that was given to me. There was a skylight, and I already had it in my heart that I wanted the next piece to burst out of a crate. So it's a mixture of the skylight, to me, needed something to move through it, from it, of it, and the piece itself needed to move from the crate. Beyond that, the work just feeds the work, you know. And some of it is both just practical, like I need to pull an area to hold another area, and sometimes it's a lot like, here's another good influence, Robert Morris. Does anybody know the artist Robert Morris? He has a great series of works called, they're called blind time drawings. And it's essentially drawing with your eyes closed, and he does it with 2 hands. Sometimes I'm just drawing with my eyes closed, because for me to draw an area, if I'm working down here, I actually can't see the rest of it. I never get to see the complete piece till I'm done and I document all the way around. So sometimes the piece just does what it wants to do. So.
Are all of your pieces abstract forms?
Oh, you're gonna hate this answer, man. All art is abstract. As soon as it's down on a piece of paper, as soon as it's presented in the real world, it's completely disconnected.
You're right, I hate that answer.
Yeah, but the honest answer is all of the forms seem to be gestural. I wouldn't know how to make us, if I wanted to make a specific shape or an image, I wouldn't work this way. I would do a casting, or I would make an object, and I have, and like I've done just good old-fashioned stack laminated wood sculptures. So for this body of work, I sort of like them to exist as large gesture drawings. And so to answer your question, across my whole body of work in life, no, there's plenty of just rendered stuff and objects made. This body of work seems to exist as a series of abstract drawings in space. So, but yes, but the real answer is all art's abstract.
The big answer I like.
Yeah. All the work in this series is untitled, but I keep having to give them titles to remind me of which one was which. This one's called Out of the Box just because it comes out of a box. It was 2 seconds away from just being the Lake City piece. But because I knew I wanted the sleeves bursting out of the box, that then dictated a little bit of the shape of the sticks, which comes back to your question about the abstraction. To me, it's not really abstract, it's just practical. Like, I'm going to trace the shape. And then I knew I wanted it to come down from the skylight. And if you look at the piece before this, it's almost an inversion of that funnel. It went down like that, and then the piece before that was that funnel shape was on its side, and the piece before that was actually a basket standing up. So it's kind of like, for me, I've been working on the same piece for like 5.5 years in 30 different versions, but even though each one is unique, they're built off of like things I liked and didn't like about the previous one.
Do you have, like, I see this opening here.
Interior, exterior, yeah.
Can you create an opening within the piece without losing this?
Yeah, absolutely. If you look back, again, there have been times where I've deliberately left almost like chicken pox all over the piece where there's been holes. There are times I make additions and prints that go along with this work where I actually take the panels of sticks and emboss them onto paper, and they'll have openings, and sometimes they'll have squares in them. Sometimes, I say sometimes, one time I actually made the image of a basket and then went back and did banding around it, just visually, not even for structure. So the answer is no, it doesn't have to be. Just, again, I was here and it felt right, but who's to say that the next one will be nothing but holes, or whatever it calls for. The question, are you an educator? Okay. A classic educator question, did I learn anything in school or college that helped me to be an artist? You're gonna hate this answer. I'm actually a high school dropout who went to college in his 20s, and what I learned was that art could be a bit of a trade. So yeah, I met a lot of people who worked as visiting artists, and I fashioned myself after that model. But in terms of like reading, writing, arithmetic, I had to learn between the lines. I'm a really bad student. I really like. I really struggled in growing up, and then in college, I think because I'd never studied art, I never even thought about it as anything. When I got to college, I was actually studying something new. I mean, I'd never made a drawing or even looked at or thought about how visual art was made till I got to college. So yeah, I'd been primarily a failed musician. So I sort of brought that approach, which is why I still think like a musician in that if you want to learn to play an instrument, you copy, you play along. So that's kind of how I taught myself to make art. Like, well, if I could do it like that. So I'm still thinking like that, but in that sense, yes. I mean, in the College of Charleston was good. So the question was, instead of being inside an architecture, inside a space, would I do them out in nature? And the answer is no, never. Because this work is very much about creating the appearance of something organic and natural within an architecture context. When I do work outdoors, I try not, it almost to me feels too easy to make an organic, natural looking work and put it outdoors and make it with natural materials. So if I do stuff outdoors, it's completely unnatural. Like the last outdoor piece I did were giant fortune cookie fortunes printed on 12-foot aluminum sheet. And we're gonna be doing those again in the fall at another venue. So I like things that don't jibe with their setting, but also respond to it. But no, I would never do these outside. That would be wrong to me. But you're welcome to. I would encourage you. So the question is about color. To me, this work is very colorful. And the thing is, like I mentioned, this body of work only uses materials found within the coffee shop. So if I wanted to add color to this, straws are how I add color. The sleeves are actually very colorful. In the past, I had used just white sleeves. If you look carefully, there's actually white and brown sleeves interspersed. And the sticks are not uniform. There's a myriad variety of color. So what you're asking about is, would I add a surface treatment or adornment or alter the material other than through physical process? And no, I would never do that. I like the inherent qualities of material. So if I want other colors, when I do the lid pieces on the wall, I use black, brown, and white lids. There's a great palette there. So, but I'm not a painter. I'm not a colorist. I'm very much a physical maker.
Are you including a tea stain?
I don't care for tea. Coffee, I use coffee grounds to make coffee ground drawings on the wall. Again, wouldn't alter the sticks other than through hand process. But I do, if you go to the website, jonathanbrilliant.com, you'll see coffee stain wall drawings. You'll see things like that. Yes, sir?
Because this is all made out of tension, if you took out one, would the whole thing collapse?
Oh, that's a great question about the misunderstanding of physics. He said, because this is all tension, is there one linchpin is what he's asking about? And the answer is no. It's actually a pattern. If you look carefully, there's two things. The sleeves themselves, it's a great question, but do you know what an algorithm, what grade are you in? So you know what an algorithm is, right? From Google and search algorithms, stuff like that, things that are built on top of each other. So if this were an algorithm, its unit is, every one is holding in 4 more sticks. So it's a 1 in 5 unit. So in a nutshell, every one stick is holding in 4 or 5 more. You would have to pull out a bunch to spring a seam, but even then it would just tear out. Now the other thing I've done, and I've doubled down with tension this time, the sleeves are stacked together just with tension, and then within them, there's one interior cable running through each line of sleeves that's pulling the whole thing. If that were to spring loose, it's really exciting. So there's that going on, and then on top of that, you see I've pulled everything with this aluminum cable. So I've tripled down on my tension, but to answer your question, no. There's no one linchpin, there's no secret thing. It's not dominoes, it is woven with tension, it is a structure. It's a hardened thing.
Also, would you ever think of using like actual coffee to make something?
I-
Like a liquid sculpture?
Oh, I wish you hadn't asked that, but yes, I have played around, not liquid, but actually, it's not hard to do, packing just with water and casting and making cast espresso. I refer to espresso because espresso dust is really fine. It'll go into solution. You want to know the trick? It's a stuff called Cafe Bustelo. Do you guys know Cafe Bustelo? It's really cheap espresso, but it's really dusty and powdery. And if you just slowly add water to it till it turns to a paste or solution, you can sculpt with that. So yeah, I've worked on stuff like that, and I use that a lot to make these coffee mud wall drawings. But yeah, it's a good question. Well,
Wearing Starbucks green on purpose, or is that
no, not at all. Green is just my favorite color, and They just happen, I mean, their straws happen to be green. Although, I mean, if you see me working, I do have a lot of Starbucks aprons that I wear, and it's only because they're pocketed aprons that fit the sticks perfectly. So I can draw from it while I'm working, and students over the years and other people have given me, I have a huge collection now of Starbucks aprons. So, it's about 4:30, people's attention span has probably shrunk. So one more question and then we'll call it. Any more questions?
Where is your next piece?
The next confirmed piece is going to be up in Durham, North Carolina at the American Tobacco campus. I don't know the space yet because I'm doing the site visit next week, and that'll be in the fall. And then beyond that, there's some exciting stuff I can't really, well, there's a show, there's a non-sighted show opening next week at the Morris Museum in Augusta. And that show, this is the thing about me, all the work's kind of feeding into itself. So here you have a piece coming out of the crate. The show at the Morris Museum is actually called Crates and Impressions. So it's actually 3 crates that have the sculptures like this built into the crates, and then it's a bunch of the prints and additions made over the tour. So that's the next show. Next installation is in the fall, and then there's some international travel coming up again this year. But when I say I've literally been on the run for the last 4 years, it's been crazy. So I'm actually sort of trying to be a little more selective, but when they contacted me here, they made me an offer I couldn't refuse, so I had to come down for a couple days and have some fun.